Bali, known as the Island of Gods, is renowned for its stunning natural beauty, rich culture, and vibrant tourism industry. However, like many other regions, Bali faces significant challenges related to biodiversity loss. Destroying rice fields and construct modern villas are very common here and never stop because of corruption and bribes. Today's podcast is not Indonesia government's daily dirty corruption, it's biodiversity loss and ecosystem impact. Stay tuned and don't bribe.
Okay, so are you ready to dive into something big today?
I think so. Hit me with it.
Today, it's the silent crisis, biodiversity loss.
Yeah, the big one.
You might be thinking, like, how does that affect me?
Right, like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's way more connected to your daily life than you might think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, we tend to think about this as some far off, problem, but it's impacting everything.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, let's get into it.
From the air we breathe to the food we eat.
Right
here, right now.
Yeah.
And we've got some pretty eye-opening research and articles.
Oh, yeah.
That lay it all out. We're talking alarming stats, real-world case studies, the whole shebang.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love case studies. Let's learn something.
All right. So our goal today is to cut through the noise, help you grasp the scale of this issue, and why it should matter to everyone, especially here in Southeast Asia.
Okay, sounds good.
So let's start with the big picture. The 2024 Living Planet Report.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
It paints a pretty stark picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not looking great.
A 73% decline in global wildlife population since 1970. Imagine, like, 3 out of every 4 animals you might have seen in your childhood, just gone.
Oh, wow, that's like almost all of them.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, that is a staggering statistic. And it's not just about, losing iconic species
Right.
like tigers or elephants, it's about the loss of entire ecosystems and the delicate balance that holds our planet together.
And that loss is happening faster in some places than others. The report highlights that Latin America has seen, get this, a 95% decline. That's like losing 19 out of every 20 animals.
Oh my gosh, that's just devastating.
Yeah. And what's even more concerning is that freshwater species are being hit the hardest, with an 85% decline.
Right.
Think about all the rivers and lakes here in Southeast Asia that are teeming with life.
Right. It's crazy to think about all those ecosystems vanishing.
And they're vital for so many things, from drinking water to food sources.
Yeah, they're crucial.
So it's kind of like you're pulling a thread from a tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
And you just watch the whole thing unravel. But what's driving this decline? Is it just one thing? Or are there multiple culprits at play here?
Well, it's definitely not just one thing. It's really a complex interplay of factors,
Yeah.
But habitat destruction is a major driver, I think. With deforestation, urbanization, and agricultural expansion all taking their toll, imagine the forests of Borneo being cleared at a rate of 1 football field every minute.
Every minute?
Every minute.
Wow.
That's the reality of deforestation in Southeast Asia. And it's pushing countless species toward extinction.
Wow, I never realized it was happening at that pace. It's just mind-boggling. And then, of course, there's climate change.
Oh, absolutely. Climate change it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's messing with temperatures, rainfall patterns, and causing extreme weather events. It's putting immense pressure on species that are already struggling to survive in those shrinking habitats.
It's like we're turning up the heat on an already fragile system. What about pollution? I know that's a big problem here in Southeast Asia.
Oh yeah, pollution is a huge threat. It's contaminating water sources, soil, and air. Think of it as poisoning the very foundations of life. And then, there's overexploitation.
Yeah.
We're overfishing, overhunting, overharvesting resources at unsustainable rates.
It's like we're taking more than our fair share from a shared pantry,
Right.
leaving nothing for others,
Yeah.
and eventually depleting the resource entirely. And I know invasive species are another issue, right?
Yes, invasive species introduced by humans, they can disrupt entire ecosystems. They often outcompete native species and spread diseases, throwing the natural balance out of whack. It's like inviting a bunch of rowdy guests to a party. They eat all the food and trash the place.
So we've got habitat loss, climate change, pollution, overexploitation, invasive species.
Yeah.
It's like a perfect storm of threats converging on biodiversity.
It really is a perfect storm, and the consequences extend far beyond the loss of individual species.
Right.
We're talking about disruptions to entire food chains, which ultimately impact our own food security.
We can't just think about animals in isolation. It's about understanding the intricate web of life that connects us all.
Exactly. Think about it this way. Bees alone contribute to crops worth billions of dollars annually.
Wow,
What happens when our food sources dwindle?
that's a scary thought. And what about the connection to climate change?
Right.
We hear so much about reducing carbon emissions, but how does biodiversity loss fit into that puzzle?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. You see, healthy ecosystems, they're like giant sponges, soaking up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Forests, wetlands, even seagrass beds, they all play a crucial role in regulating our climate.
So as we lose biodiversity, we're essentially weakening our planet's natural defenses against climate change.
Exactly. And that, in turn, accelerates the negative impacts of climate change, creating a vicious cycle. Take the Amazon rainforest, for example. It stores billions of tons of carbon, but deforestation is pushing it closer and closer to a tipping point, where it could actually start releasing more carbon than it absorbs.
Wow, that would be catastrophic, not just for the Amazon, but for the entire planet.
Oh, it would be a major blow to our efforts to combat climate change. And then there's the loss of coastal ecosystems,
Right.
like mangroves. You know, they not only store carbon, but they also act as natural buffers, protecting coastlines from storms and floods.
It's like we're removing the shock absorbers from our coastlines, making them much more vulnerable to the impacts of climate change.
Exactly.
And that vulnerability translates into real risks for people, especially those living in coastal communities. The loss of these natural defenses puts lives and livelihoods at stake. This is all pretty heavy stuff. But is there any good news? Are there any signs that we can turn this tide? It can feel a little overwhelming, you know,
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
when you hear about all these like interconnected issues.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, it's not all doom and gloom though, right? There are some bright spots.
Oh, absolutely. While the challenges are immense, there are inspiring stories of conservation success happening all over the world, even right here in Southeast Asia.
I'm curious about those community-led mangrove restoration projects.
Yeah.
What makes them so successful?
Well, for one, they empower local communities to take ownership of protecting their environment. They often integrate traditional knowledge with modern scientific approaches, which can be incredibly effective.
So it's about understanding the needs of both the ecosystem and the people who rely on it.
Exactly. And the benefits go beyond just restoring the mangroves themselves. These projects can create jobs, enhance coastal protection, and even contribute to climate change mitigation by sequestering carbon.
It's like a ripple effect,
Yeah.
of positive impacts spreading through the community and beyond.
Absolutely. And it's not just about mangroves. There are also amazing reforestation efforts happening in places like Indonesia and Thailand.
I find those rewilding efforts in Europe fascinating. Bringing back keystone species like wolves and bison. It's like they're piecing together a puzzle that was almost lost.
Yeah, it's incredible. What's incredible is how those reintroduced species are shaping the landscape. They're creating a mosaic of habitats that benefit a whole range of plants and animals.
It just shows the power of nature to heal itself,
For sure.
when given the chance. But these success stories are just a small part of the solution, right? What needs to happen on a larger scale to really turn the tide?
Well, I think we need a fundamental shift in how we view and value nature. It can't just be about extracting resources for short-term profit.
Right.
We need to recognize the intrinsic worth of biodiversity and the essential services that it provides.
So it's like moving from a mindset of exploitation to a mindset of stewardship,
Right.
right? Understanding that we're part of this intricate web of life,
Mm.
not separate from it.
Right, exactly. It's about seeing the bigger picture and understanding that our own well-being is deeply intertwined with the health of the planet.
So what about individuals? What can we do in our own lives to make a difference? I know it can feel overwhelming, but I know there are things we can all do, right?
Absolutely. While individual actions might seem small, they have a collective impact when we all participate. One of the most important things you can do is examine your own consumption habits.
Makes sense. It's about being mindful of the choices we make every day. What we buy, what we eat, how we travel.
Exactly. Think about where the things you buy come from. Are they produced sustainably? What's their environmental footprint? Are there more eco-friendly alternatives? These are all questions we should be asking ourselves.
It's about taking responsibility for our impact on the planet.
Right.
And it's not
Yeah.
just about changing our own habits, it's also about advocating for change on a larger scale.
Yes. Get involved in your community, join environmental organizations, support local conservation efforts. Even something as simple as writing to your elected officials to express your concern about biodiversity loss can make a difference.
It's about raising awareness, spreading the word, and making our voices heard. And let's not forget the role of technology in all of this. It's incredible how technology can be used to protect nature.
Oh, absolutely. Technology is playing an increasingly important role in conservation. Drones are being used to monitor deforestation. Artificial intelligence is helping us track wildlife populations, and citizen science projects are engaging people all over the world in data collection and research. It's really exciting to see how technology is empowering us to be more effective stewards of the planet.
It's like giving conservation efforts a supercharge, allowing us to collect data and monitor threats in ways we never could before. And speaking of supercharges, what about those financial mechanisms that are being used to fund conservation? I've heard about things like carbon offsets and biodiversity credits.
Those are really interesting developments. They're basically ways to put a financial value on the services that nature provides. So, for example, a company that wants to offset its carbon emissions could invest in a forest conservation project.
It's like creating a financial incentive to protect biodiversity,
Yeah.
turning conservation into a viable economic activity.
Exactly. And those financial mechanisms are becoming increasingly sophisticated, with things like blockchain technology being used to track and verify the impact of conservation investments.
That's incredible. It sounds like we're starting to see a real shift in how we value and protect nature. But there's still a long way to go, right?
There is. We need to scale up these efforts significantly if we want to reverse the trend of biodiversity loss. But the good news is that there's a growing global movement recognizing the urgency of this crisis.
I'm encouraged by the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that was adopted a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's an ambitious agreement aiming to protect 30% of the world's land and sea by 2030.
It's a major step in the right direction. But it's going to require a collective effort from governments, businesses, and individuals to achieve those goals.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We need to work together if we want to create a future where both people and nature can thrive.
Mm.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
Yeah, we have.
in this deep dive into biodiversity loss. From the threats to the solutions, the challenges to the opportunities, it's clear that this is an incredibly complex issue. But it's also incredibly important.
It is, absolutely. Biodiversity, it underpins the very fabric of life on Earth. It's not just about protecting charismatic animals. It's about safeguarding the ecosystems that provide us with clean air, clean water, food, medicine.
So much more.
So much more, yeah.
And we've seen how these ecosystems are intricately connected,
Yeah.
how the loss of one species can have a ripple effect throughout the entire web of life.
Oh, yeah. Think about the domino effect. If we lose pollinators like bees and butterflies,
Right.
it impacts our food production. If we destroy coastal ecosystems like mangroves, we lose those natural barriers against storms and floods. It's all interconnected.
Yeah, it's like we're pulling at the threads of a really delicate tapestry,
Yeah.
not realizing that the whole thing could unravel. So what's the takeaway message here? What do we want listeners to walk away with?
I think the key takeaway is that this is not someone else's problem.
Yeah.
It's everyone's problem. And it's not something that's happening far away in the future. It's happening right now,
Yeah.
right here in Southeast Asia.
So what can we do about it? We've talked about the need for systemic change, but what about those individual actions we can take in our daily lives? Are there things we can do that actually make a difference?
Absolutely. Individual actions might seem small, but they have a collective impact when we all participate. One of the most powerful things you can do is be mindful of your consumption habits.
You're talking about being a conscious consumer, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about where things come from, how they're produced, and what impact they have on the environment.
Exactly. Reduce your consumption of meat and dairy. Choose sustainably sourced products. Minimize food waste. Avoid single-use plastics. These are all things that can have a real impact.
And it's not just about what we buy. It's also about how we get around. Choosing to walk, bike, or use public transportation instead of driving alone can significantly reduce our carbon footprint.
And don't underestimate the power of your voice. Talk to your friends and family about biodiversity loss. Spread awareness on social media. Support businesses that are committed to sustainability. The more people who are aware of this issue, the more likely we are to see real change.
It's about using our collective power to push for a more sustainable future. And there's so many ways to get involved. You can volunteer for a local conservation organization, donate to environmental causes, or even participate in citizen science projects.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the solution. It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in protecting the planet.
I'm reminded of that quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
So true. When people come together with a shared purpose, incredible things can happen. And that's what we need now more than ever. A collective effort to protect biodiversity and create a more sustainable future for all.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we'll leave you with a challenge. To learn more, to take action, and to be part of the solution.
Because the future of biodiversity and our own future depends on it.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of the silent crisis. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and a renewed sense of hope that together we can make a difference.